Welcome to Look Behind the Look, the new podcast that examines iconic looks in film, television, music, and fashion history. I'm your host, Tiffany BARTOK. Hello and welcome to a new day. It's a new day in America. I already feel 100% lighter, and I'm ready to receive positive change. How about you? Inauguration was great, and this month has been surprisingly busy. I've had the honor of talking to some incredible artists that I have yet to share with you, and I've been so thrilled to hear your reactions in all forms, in reviews, comments on social, DMs, and texts. I hope you know that it gives me and Kelly and Jason Nicole, who have slaved away on this project, so much fuel to keep going when you engage with us. I realize that you have a lot of content to choose from, and the fact that you spend time with us makes all of our hard work worth it. Today, I am going to share with you my conversation with James Boehmer. James is the Global Artistic Director for Shiseido Makeup. He is a mastermind of product development. We got into it, let me tell you. To prepare you, this is a deep dive into creating innovative products, and James was so generous to share his time and his inspiration, process, and philosophies with me. Don't forget to follow James on IG as well, James Aaron Boehmer, for some beautiful art for your feed. He is full of amazing information that he is sharing with all of us today, and I hope you enjoy this episode. And last thing, don't forget that if you're listening to this, you can see all of the looks that we're referencing if you watch the pod via YouTube. So enjoy. Hi, James. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have James Boehmer with me today, and I am going to we have so much to talk about today. And your history in this industry is so wide, and there's so much to say. And so I just really want to get started because I want to get it all in here. I know you from NARS times, and I know your artistry from then when I was like such a fan and geeking out over everybody who was the big thing in the industries. And your work is incredible, obviously. And you were working with the brand when I came to know your work. And I now you're at Shiseido, of course, and we met in person finally at the Kevin O'Con premiere in the Hamptons, and it was so great, and I fanned out a little bit. And so I'm so happy that you agreed to do this, because I've been wanting to talk to you and share all that you know about creating a makeup line for an iconic brand and all of the accomplishments that you can speak on. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the business?
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm also so excited to be here. And again,
Oh,
something
thanks.
something that maybe not everyone knows is that we also have a really good mutual friend, Justin Teodoro, who did a lot of the animation for the opening credits of your movie, and I know Justin really well. So that was actually what brought me to the premiere of the Kevin documentary in the Hamptons. So I'm also very grateful for that little chance meeting, and of course, I'm
Yes.
so happy to be here and doing this. Well, I'm not really anywhere. I'm in my apartment, but I'm here. I'm here in spirit.
I
So
know, right? You've carved out the time.
that's
That's
right.
all we can do now.
It's always so hard. I mean, it's always interesting to figure out like where to start.
Yeah.
I've always been, I guess, a fan of beauty and makeup specifically, and I think for me as a kid, growing up in the Midwest, I felt like this whole notion of glamour and maybe artifice and performance was always such a beacon to me, and was always something that I was attracted to from a young age. So I always remember lighting, in camera effects in movies or on television, magazine editorials, all of that sort of it paints this moment, I think, that was always very influential. What I thought I was going to do was actually be more in front of the camera and more sort of performer. I wanted to dance, and that was what
Oh,
my first
really? I
love
didn't
was.
know that about
Uh,
you.
yeah, so I sort of, that was always my dream, and I sort of started studying dance a little bit too late. I started as I was becoming a teenager, so my discipline and my commitment was not really there. I wanted to be a, stupid teenager like everyone did. So I think it's interesting. I sort of fell into makeup, I think, sort of organically post my dreams of performing, because I was adjacent to all of that. As a teenager, I sort of fell into, doing makeup on my friends and doing makeup on myself. I was in high school in the 90s when there were, late 80s, early 90s, during all of that great expression. The supermodel moments, grunge, no eyebrows, all of that sort of moment. So I feel like I was very experimental personally. And then when I started college, I just sort of connected with people in my arts college in Chicago that were making student films, that were doing performance. So that sort of, I guess, solidified this idea of makeup. And then I sort of just pulled it out of a hat, honestly, because I decided to drop out of college and I had to tell my dad what I was going to do as a career. And I just said, sort of, makeup artist is what I'm going to do. And
so his dreams of you being a professional dancer were trashed, and now you're a makeup artist.
I don't think anyone in my family was ever as into the dreams of me becoming like a professional dancer or like a performer. I don't think
that's really a relief.
Yeah, like I don't think anyone was. I think it was more like, honestly, I think my dad was actually a little relieved when I had something to focus on, because it was always very much adjacent to, I was taking sewing classes. I was taking studio art classes. I sort of studied everything. I was taking modern dance. I mean, I was sort of a non-declared art major. And I think, that was probably more frustrating to my dad, honestly, than having a point of view. And again, I was lucky enough. I did this independent film. A friend of mine in school, her boyfriend at the time, actually got a little bit of money to produce a film in Chicago, and I came on board to do costumes and hair and makeup just because I sort of was into it. And I was basically like free labor, like all of us were working on this project. And the producer that was working on the film liked me, and I guess saw some moxie in me. I don't know what you call it. And then I started booking work with him shortly after on like commercial work and television. So it sort of became, I mean, from that first little job, I started working, and then through him, really, I met other makeup artists in the industry. I started working with and assisting other makeup artists in Chicago, not really on anything, initially nothing major, like lots of catalog work, lots of commercial work. But it was a start, and it gave me sort of my entrance into the industry. And then at the same time, I realized that you could also sort of supplement your income and get free product and sort of stay connected to brands, really more on the brand side. I started working like the retail end of makeup. I started working at Barney's in Chicago, and just that sort of developed the relationships that I started with brands. And that's what led to my very long tenure at NARS, actually. So
Barney's. What college were you at?
I was at Columbia College in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. In Chicago the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So and where were you born?
I grew up in St. Louis, and I was there. I left for Chicago with a friend of mine from high school. I did one semester of community college before going to Chicago. So I moved to Chicago in March of '94, which, was just such an interesting time, I think, culturally, especially in like the sort of zeitgeist of fashion at the moment. It was
for
still
sure
that moment of the supers, and the moment of, Kevin and Francois and all of that, that incredibly inspiring moment. So yeah, I mean, I think it was by 96, I started working for the brand NARS, in Chicago at Barney's. And then that sort of just developed the relationship that sort of evolved over the years.
What was the Chicago scene like? I don't really know a lot about it. I was in Portland, Oregon, so everything seemed glamorous to me. But did Chicago feel like, did you have a yearning to go to New York, or did you feel satisfied in Chicago?
I think I always wanted to go to New York. I actually, from St. Louis growing up, I mean, I think my initial thought was that I would go to New York. I knew that I would end up in New York. Chicago was just sort of closer to
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also because I had an attraction to the city. I'd been there, as a teenager, and it seemed like an interesting place to be. I think there was excitement in Chicago, especially at that time, just because of being a young person and like being away from home for the first time. So I think probably like you, I mean, everything seemed glamorous to me, right?
Right?
Like everything seemed like a first, everything seemed new. But definitely like I think this idea of performance, like, because of the people that I met in school, meeting people that were studying fashion design, meeting artists, meeting filmmakers, performance artists. And again, I think there was this affinity in that group, that network of people. So it was sort of like really quickly, all of that access. I sort of found myself in the middle of all of that world, which did seem very different from growing up in Missouri. So yeah, all of it was inspiring. I think the fashion part of it, I think, which was always something that I really loved, and I was always, I poured over fashion magazines. My bedroom walls were plastered with, tears from magazines, and so I was always very attracted to that world, and I think it was a harder world to come by in Chicago because so much of the industry in Chicago is obviously more commercial. So I had my opportunity. I worked with fashion makeup artists in Chicago, but it wasn't, I feel like that part of my career didn't really start until I started traveling and working in New York, even before I moved. And then obviously when I moved, which was 2003, that's when I feel like that part of the industry and the world sort of opened up to me.
Right. I wonder if I always think of like the kids who don't know, you know what I mean? The kids out there who don't know. I always wonder, I want to say like, could they possibly understand what we felt in those department stores, in that department store culture? Like, there's Sephora now and there's YouTube, right? These are the two outlets, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like nobody can ever really understand unless you were there, that community behind the counter and the whole culture of it. And it was like a city, and that was your neighborhood. NARS was your neighborhood, but
Yeah.
you lived in this city of Barney's.
Yeah.
And how didn't you feel like you arrived? Like, didn't you feel like this is it? Like,
Oh, totally.
I'm here.
I think that's I mean, it is, I think because we live in such a different world now, we have so much more access to everything, because of our devices and because of the internet and because of social media. So there was something really interesting about, I think, being a teenager, growing up in a small town, really having to sort of seek out all of those things that you were interested in. Like you had to, like, there was only one bookstore in, St. Louis where I could get copies of Italian Vogue. Or there was only like one movie theater that would like play sort of like art house films. I mean, I remember seeing My Own Private Idaho and like my brain's exploding.
Yes.
So things like that, I think just not having the access to everything like we do now is one big part of it. And then to your point, when you land in this environment of like a department store, I think especially department stores like Barney's in the 90s, they were so exclusive. The products and the designers and the wares that they actually carried were really hard to find, were really like the only points of distribution that you could find. So, not just getting like a Jean-Paul Gaultier top or like helmet-laying jeans, but also being able to get like NARS lipstick or Stila eyeshadow or Makeup Forever foundation. There was such like an exclusivity in the access to everything. So you did almost feel like a gatekeeper a little bit, right? Like
That's so
you definitely felt
true.
like an insider. I felt like an insider. And again, to your point of this community, like, you sort of become one of those like retail kids, I guess, and it becomes part of the community that you're in. So not only this community of artists and filmmakers and designers and whatnot, then you also had this sort of community of people that were sort of these insiders in fashion, quote unquote, so
Right.
so it was like an education more than anything. I always say that like those formative years, like, I would say like, 90, when I arrived in Chicago to probably like 98, 99, like that seemed like my education actually, more than my, limited experience in college. I was only there for just under 2 years total, but like I guess the real life experience, starting to work, assisting people, doing jobs that were like, now I look back on them and I'm like, oh my God, if anyone saw this now, I would be mortified. I would be so embarrassed. But you learn so much
Of
through all
course.
of that sort of trial and error. So yeah, I mean, it was such a special time. And I remember when, when Barney's finally closed its doors. I mean, for me, that was really bittersweet and really heartbreaking, because it was always a part of my career, like from the very beginning. And then, through my almost 20 years with NARS, because NARS as a brand launched at Barney's, and Francois had a long career, doing the ad campaigns for Barney's. So there was just such a part of, my narrative that was so linked to Barney's. My ex-boyfriend was in visuals for Barney's, so it was like my family was in that organization. So yeah, I mean, now we have the internet, now we have Google. The good thing is you can still see all of those great things.
Yes.
You can sort of dig them up.
That is the positive, that it's all there. I used to say to my son all the time, we used to have to go to the library for this.
Totally. Oh my God, you have to go to the library. You'd spend you'd spend all your time in record stores. You'd spend all your time in bookstores, which I actually still do. It's funny. It's like one of my favorite things is just like to get in the car and drive. Like I sort of like find a bookstore like somewhere in Long Island or New Jersey or Pennsylvania that I've never been to, and just sort of go and spend the afternoon, digging in a used bookstore. Or
I do love that too. I do love that too. I miss Tower Records for that daydreaming as well, flipping through things and daydreaming. So at NARS you were trained, like, can you talk a little bit about the corporate culture and how you stay creative within a corporate culture? Because a lot of people would see it as like coloring inside the lines a little bit, but you managed to still innovate and very much be original. So how does that relationship work?
I mean, I think something that, I mean, like so many of those brands in the 90s, I think something that, the NARS brand did that was really special was it always held on to its very specific brand point of view. So I think that really speaks volumes to Francois NARS as a creative director, and also the relationship that Francois had with Shiseido Corporation, which ended up acquiring the NARS brand, I think in the early 2000s, but always really maintained the integrity and the DNA of the brand. So I do think, like, I mean, I did a little bit of everything, which I found very interesting. Again, it was a really good part of my education. Like, first and foremost, being, spending time in retail environments. So you visit stores, you're working with real women and real customers, which is such a great education. Like, you approach it much more as solving a problem when, versus when you're on set, you can do whatever you want. And you're sort of like creating this image or creating like a fantasy. It's a different approach. Right. But I think what you learn in the real world and like retail environment is you learn how to like correct an over-tweezed eyebrows, or like make someone's face look slimmer, or cover a breakout, or deal with like texture in the skin. So those are really, really things that are such a big part of your education. And I also think it's interesting because if you're somebody who likes people, and I am that person, I connect with people. I love to spend time with people. I do think there's that, there's something really special about that exchange. You have that magic, that connection when it comes to, meeting somebody in such an intimate environment. And then from the corporate side, yeah, I mean, it's like, especially when I started traveling for the brand. So when we would have events, I would sort of go to wherever it would be. So, if it was an in-store event in Florida, I would go. If it was like a fashion show that we were doing in New York, if it was like a store event, like you sort of just became, I was one of those team members that just sort of went everywhere. And then when I moved to New York, I think, oh, sorry, having a light flash
I
here.
like it. I like it. It's very, very
It's dramatic.
yes.
When I moved to New York, I had already started assisting Ayako, who was the makeup director for the brand at the time, when I could. And then when I moved to New York, I basically just became more available to work with her. So then I started working with her on editorial shoots, campaign shoots, getting some of her celebrity clients ready. And then, like I said, it was like the minute I landed in New York, I started working more in the industry, I guess, definitely. But then I also started doing more for the brand. I started to deal more with education. I started to deal more with our product development team. So just sort of getting, because I had access to the brand, I moved to Nolita, and the office at the time for NARS was on Broadway, and I lived on Mott Street, so I was 3 blocks away. So it was also like, honestly,
come on,
like,
you were living the life. Like, come on.
from like a geographical point
That's
of view,
amazing.
I think it was literally like, well, James is down the street. He can be at the office in 5 minutes, whatever.
That's great.
But then I started traveling internationally. I think like shortly after I moved to New York, I went to Japan and Hong Kong for the first time. Because that was a big part of what was happening for the brand. We were widening distribution and launching in foreign markets. So I was one of the artists that was really responsible for that. So again, all of that work, and then that led to starting to work on ad campaigns with Francois, and like one of my favorite experiences of my time at NARS was actually doing makeup for the Make Up Your Mind, Express Yourself book.
Yes.
I mean, I think it was honestly, I think for me, it was such an amazing experience because, it was Lana Coro and I, who I know you also know Lana.
Yes.
An amazing part of my experience and part of my family, and such an incredible makeup artist. We worked really closely with Francois on sort of everything that was happening for the brand. And I know I won't speak for her, but I'll speak for myself. I was really honored to have the opportunity to do makeup for the book, because it's so different than an ad campaign or a magazine editorial, because it's like a book, it exists forever.
Right.
And it's interesting, I think, again, just speaking to, what an innovator and what a creative mind and what a forward thinking person Francois is. I mean, even the format of the book is like square. Before and after, I mean, it's like what website product pages look like. It's what Instagram beauty tutorials look like. And he did it first, where he really sort of like demystifies the makeup application. You take a before, and there's like a vellum that overlays over the book so that you can literally see where each product is applied, and then you get the after. And that was really always his goal, was that there's so much mystery, there's so much like secrecy that sort of like that makeup artists are shrouded in, right? It's like this miracle that only I know how to do. Only I know how to contour, or only I know how to make your eyebrow bigger, or I know how to correct your lip. But this really demystifies, I think, the art of makeup and made it so much more accessible. And I think what was really interesting about that experience too is that we worked on real people instead of models. So it was like there were the age group that was represented in the people that we shot for that book was like 16 to I think 72. And so it was,
and
also
the skin tones are very diverse, and of course the genders, you know. Yes. So this is the second book that you worked, the second one like that.
Yes. So the first book that Francois worked on was Make Up Your Mind. And I think that was done, I think around 1998 or 99. And then the second book was Make Up Your Mind, Express Yourself, which I think we launched in maybe 2010, 2011, somewhere around there.
I realized I didn't have that book, and I cried a little bit, and I went to the oh man, I thought I had both of them, and I was freaking out. So yes, I think it was later, because I don't know how that happened, because I definitely got the first one right away.
It was so great too. I think like I mean, we shot that book for a month, which I often think about that, just I think about it in relationship to like how we all work now. I mean, I think we work a lot faster. We work a lot less. a time commitment. And I think just to be able to, you know, we shot that for a month solid. We really had time to create those looks. We really had time to, it was just a slower time. And I think it's like, just the whole experience was just so lovely. Like shooting the models, finding their angles, you know, sort of like deciding what we were going to do, what type of like image we were going to portray. And I think,
how
you know,
was that process? How was that process? Was it like, let's do a very dramatic look, and then you, like, for example, I talked with Lena a little bit about how for some reason it's okay that you did this deep smoky eye, so bold, you know, purple, and also this wine colored lipstick, which is, no one does that. Why does this work?
I think you know, it's interesting because I think, like, you know, again, just such a great, always such a great experience working with Francois. But I think one thing that I really learned from him, and I think especially on that shoot specifically, and certainly on lots of other experiences and shoots that I had over the years, but I think with that experience, what was really interesting was the sort of celebration of spontaneity and not planning something too much and not overthinking it. Like really being in the moment and giving yourself this opportunity to play. Because we were working with real women and real men, we weren't working with models. Part of the discovery of the process was like finding the angles. So, you know, Francois would photograph them, you know, in very beautiful light. So like the before is just as gorgeous as the after, but really sort of finding their angles that we all felt like they looked the most powerful or the most attractive in. And then we would sort of build the look from there. Like, oh, okay, like she has such a beautiful neck and has such a great profile. So let's do like a really stretched out eye. And then, you know, I don't know, he would say something like, think about Grace Jones, you know, or like, think about like Marissa Berenson. And that was always how Francois worked too. It was very much reference and the sort of language of reference. So that was a big part of how we would communicate. Like, you know, he would throw out a reference to a film or like an icon of Hollywood or fashion, and you would sort of create the look based on that. And I think again, to me, that's like, that was part of why I always really wanted to work with Francois. I mean, I think that's why his work always spoke to me, is I got that, that insider wink, you know, like that little bit of like, I'm throwing a reference to Sylvie Vartan. And if you know Sylvie Vartan, will you get this color combo, or will you get this sort of cheeky reference? And such a sense of humor. And I think that's something that I find is missing a lot in, I would say, in the beauty industry at large. Like everything's so serious, and I don't know why it should be. I mean, it's the least serious thing we do. We put makeup and color on our face that we don't need to wear. That's supposed to make us feel, you know, better and more powerful and more confident. And it shouldn't be serious. So I think, you know, to answer your question, like, why did it work to do like a really strong eye and a really strong lip? I think there's always something about the balance. And I think that's something that I always really think about, and have sort of always thought about in my career, is like what Coco Chanel said about like, take one thing off before you leave, you know. So maybe it's about how you leave the skin. The skin is more fresh when you do a strong eye or lip, or maybe, you know, when you do a really heavy contour on the face, you don't do as much on the lip or eye. So there's something about like what you don't do, I think, is as important to what you do.
And that's really in the artistry, right? To like, that's not something you can teach or learn. You're just like, what's the one thing? And then you instinctually know that, right?
I think it's a lot of trial
and error.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it maybe is instinctual. I think there is part of it that is that, but then I also think, you know, I've been doing this for 25 years, something like that.
I won't tell anybody.
I don't even know. It's, you know, it's something that I've done, and I think you learn what works and what doesn't. And I think oftentimes, and I think, again, this is really about like the makeup artists, the photographers, the stylists, like the teachers, the people that I've worked with have cultivated that in me. And I think that so often it's about, you know, you try something. And I think that's sort of part of the job. At least that's what it always has been. Like, you try something, if it doesn't work, you take it off and you do something else. You learn what works from doing. And I think sometimes making mistakes, and maybe sometimes you're being a little bit too much in the moment. Maybe you're following what's happening with the trend. Maybe you're doing something that is like not as authentic to what you really think, and you try it and you realize, oh, okay, that didn't work for me. I don't like when the skin looks like this, or I don't like that much foundation, or I don't like that type of eye makeup, or I like when the mascara is clumpy, not clean. Like, you develop all of these little characteristics that then really start to formulate your point of view. And I think that's something that's so interesting. Like, what I've always been attracted to in the makeup industry, and why I love makeup artists, is because we're like-minded, and I will never do something the same as someone else. Like, even if we have the same brief, we'll approach it in a different way. We all have our own sensibilities, and we all have our own touch, and we all have our own, I guess, our own feelings that we inject into our work. So there's room for everybody's expression. And I think that's so beautiful. That's my favorite thing about, I think
it is really beautiful.
Going back to the access of having access to everybody's work, or having access, via social media, to follow like emerging artists, to follow, emerging style icons that are sort of, existing in this different realm. I mean, it's the same thing that we did 20 years ago with magazine editorials. It's just now all digital. So I still find it, really inspiring and really, really exciting. And I think, flashing forward to what I've done with Shiseido, like seeing that generation of artists connect and respond to the products that I've created is like the most rewarding thing that I could ever think about. I mean, more than maybe as much as like having a real person, like the product. Obviously, that's the most important thing. But when makeup artists like the product, like the payoff, the texture, the color, the performance, and use it in their work, that's also so rewarding to me as well.
Well, I was so lucky to be at the makeup launch of the line that you created. Was it even 2 years ago? Time is flying.
I know, it's crazy.
It feels like it was yesterday, but I forgot this year doesn't count. So, it kind of was yesterday. But, just seeing, I always say on this podcast, especially, that I just love good things happening to good people. And, to see how you were enjoying, how everybody was loving and testing, and something that you created. Oh, can you explain what that feels like? Not everybody gets to experience something like that regular people are geeking out over your creation.
It's still actually one of those, like, I'm probably like a lot of people. One of the things that's the hardest for me is to like really truly live in the moment, because I think that, especially with, development guidelines, which we're always in development of something that's launching, 2 years from now.
Sure.
We work so far in advance, so we're always in the future in a certain respect. I think fashion, industry was always like that too. You're always 6 months ahead of everybody. So you almost negate this idea of like living in the present. So having those moments, having like when we launched the brand, and like actually celebrating and actually having that moment to sort of like let it kick in, it's crazy. I mean, I think I'm incredibly humbled to be some, like gay freak from, the suburbs of Missouri that like was able to, was given the opportunity to like reimagine one of the oldest makeup brands in the world. It's totally crazy and totally amazing, and like what an opportunity. And I still have those pinch me moments. Like, I still get excited when someone sends me a DM on Instagram that's like, I just wanted to let you know that I love the foundation, or I wanted to let you know that, like, this color, blah blah blah. All of those little things, like, they mean so much, because obviously, I think this part of my career and sort of product development, creating an identity for a brand, doing the imagery, creating the like voice and the language and all of that, it is such a part of me, you know, it's such a part of my personal interpretation of the brand, and what I love about the brand and what I've always been inspired by, you know, and sort of putting my spin on it. So, you know, any sort of, any reaction is just incredible. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's like, we sort of, but then you sort of move on too. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, we started this project, unofficially in 2015. I was sort of, you know, thinking about it, conceptualizing some things. And then as the team was built, you know, to put the team in place that was required. So, you know, the marketing people and the product, actual product development people, and packaging, and, you know, the visual merchandising, all of it, like, we sort of were put together staggered between 2015 and 2016. And then we launched in 2018. So, you know, we were able to sort of, I do feel like we had a lot of time to really think about it and decide what it was that we wanted to do and what our point of view was, what elements of the brand we were going to highlight, and what was going to inform our storytelling moving forward. But then now it's like, now we're just on that cycle where it's like, you just keep moving. Like, it's like, you know, okay, well, we're launching this in January, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So, yeah, I don't even know if that answered a question at all.
No, it did. It really did, because, you know, it's interesting. Like, if you release one film and you have a slate of films, you know, and you're like, okay, so, and then you start analyzing things and you're like, people are responding to this film. And so that means that this film is going to serve this purpose. And I understand the puzzle pieces of looking at the big scope of how this lays in the scheme of things that you're going to do. And those are all things that you have to think about when you're, you know, thinking big.
I think those are the hardest things too, because I think, you know, and I think sometimes for me personally, the most difficult things are exactly those. Like, the difficulty lies in the editing, right? The difficulty, you know, and you know, this is like from making films, like, so much of the magic, so many of the things that you really love and that you really respond to and that are really personal, like, end up not being seen by anybody. And I think that's the same thing, you know, with the work I do, whether it's in product. I mean, I can't tell you how many shades and how many formulas and how many textures, you know, we haven't launched that have just stayed internal for whatever reason we walk away from. And even just imagery, like imagery for ad campaigns, imagery for social, imagery for all of that.
I didn't think about that.
We sort of overshoot. I like to overshoot so that we have options again. So you feel like you're getting the truest expression, I guess. But yeah, so much of what we do, you don't actually see.
When you're editing, what does it tie back to? Like, you talk about the voice and things like this. What do you like in a film? It would say, I would say, oh, I love this call with the psychic. We have to have it in the movie. But somebody would be like, Tiffany, it doesn't tie back to any of your themes. And I'm like, you know, what do you weigh things against?
I think part of it is, you know, part of it is that, like, if it's maybe too far outside of the voice or the code that we sort of set for the brand, that's one
right.
evaluation. And then I think,
and who comes up with the voice, James? So how do you?
I mean, it's a group. So the team that I'm on, which is based in New York for Shiseido Makeup, is, you know, we're a very small team that works directly with our headquarters, which is based in Tokyo. So it's sort of like it's a group effort. We all sort of put our heads together and say, okay, yes, this works. No, it doesn't. Yes, this seems right. To what you were saying earlier, also part of it is like, what has the consumer responded to? What's working, what's not, quote unquote. So part of it is like, how do we amplify what's working at the same time as like being open to like and experimenting with something that is new and trying something different. So it's definitely a consensus, right? Like it's people on our communication team, people on our marketing team, people sort of just in the brand in Tokyo. I think everyone has sort of an opinion about it, and you sort of just, I guess you noodle it and finesse it until you land on something that everyone agrees on. But you know, it's ultimately commerce too. I think that's the other thing. Like, I always think about like, I'm not creating, I'm not doing makeup for a film that's like esoteric and is just for mood, or is just for, it's just performance. I mean,
Right.
I love doing that as well in my career, but like what I do for Shiseido is ultimately, you want people to be attracted to it. You hope that people are attracted to it, people resonate, respond, and that it implores them to try the product. So I think it's very different from just, I guess, blind creation. I'll use this as an example. Everyone at Shiseido will kill me for saying this, but I'll say it anyways. I love yellow against the eye. Yellow is a shade that is probably historically the lowest performing eyeshadow or eyeliner shade. But, I've wanted to do a yellow eyeliner since we launched the brand, and I'm finally launching it in May of next year. Mark your calendars. But it's sort of about level setting the expectation, right? Like, I know that, like, I don't think that the yellow, although it's really expressive and cool, and I think that there's a lot of things you can do with it, I don't think it's not going to sell as much as a black eyeliner. But, to have the opportunity to put that expression and that personality in a range, managing your expectation, knowing that like the black liner is always going to sell more than the teal or the yellow or the white. But you still want to do the teal, the yellow, and the white.
Yeah, I have your white.
I love the white.
I love it. I love it. And the teal, forget it. I mean, I love. When I think of Shiseido, I think of skincare and like the perfect skin. And I think that's been like, and of course I think of it, how the makeup makes my skin look better, and how did that come to be? And is that still a thought when you're creating things for the line? I think that most people feel that way. Is that true? I don't know.
And that was something that we sort of landed on before we created anything, really, was this, part of the initial development when the team sort of was put together was speaking to consumers, speaking to artists, speaking to editors, speaking to, people in and out of the industry that know about the Shiseido brand. And I think historically our heritage has always been in skincare. We've always had makeup products as well. But I think what people know about Shiseido and what people are really loyal to in the brand is skincare, and this understanding of Shiseido understands, because of their research and the art and the science, this sort of fusion of art and science, they understand skin texture, they understand like efficacy, safety, all of those things that are real hallmarks of the brand. So when we were thinking about makeup, we knew that it had to correlate with that. Like, it couldn't just be makeup for makeup's sake. It had to also be something from a textural point of view. We wanted something that felt like skincare, that felt weightless, that felt very invisible, that felt really sensorial, so that it was this new experience in makeup that didn't feel heavy. Because I think that's one thing, I think from a makeup artist point of view, I'll always say, and I think you can speak to this too, like, the skin prep is always what makes the makeup look beautiful. How you manipulate the foundation or how you manipulate the eyeshadow or the lipstick is sort of secondary to what the skin really looks like. And I think portraying skin in like a very alive, very vibrant, very healthy sort of way is something that has always been important to me as an artist. And I think translating the Shiseido DNA into a makeup line, I think that was the most important thing that we could do, is this idea of no matter what you're wearing on the skin, complexion, blush, highlighter, illuminator, or it being an eyeshadow, eyeliner, lipstick, whatever, is that it had to have this surprising element of like weightlessness, of like an interesting texture, something maybe that you haven't felt before, or just the idea of pure weightlessness, so that you never felt, even if you have a lot of makeup on, you never feel the weight of the makeup. So that was something that I think that's sort of always our marching orders when it comes to any product that we develop. And I think that's what people respond to. It feels really different. It's a very different approach to makeup because, oftentimes I think, especially as we've all experienced, when makeup has a lot of performance, when makeup is long wear, when makeup's waterproof, when makeup is stays on,
if you feel suffocated by your waterproof, long wearing performative makeup, that is not a good sign.
Well, and that was the thing too. It was like, I think there was an element of surprise. Like we, I think for all of us, that worked on this project, I think we were, and still, all of us that are still working on this project, something that was really important for us is like to feel things that we hadn't seen, or like to reinterpret or reimagine something that we hadn't seen. So we're launching a foundation in January that is all about light and light optics and light reflection.
I want it.
It's amazing, and it's really something like, again, we think about like how we started approaching this product was, there are people among us that like coverage when it comes to foundation.
Right.
We want something that feels like really comfortable, really hydrating, but that's also going to make your skin look flawless. And a lot of times when you build a heavier, fuller coverage in a foundation, it doesn't feel good. So how do you not only make it look like your best skin imaginable? So how does it handle light? Because, I think any makeup artist, photographer, anybody that's worked, any amount of time on set, I mean, even all of us now, as we are adapting to like spending our life in front of a Zoom,
right.
The lighting is everything, right? And so how do you incorporate light optics and light diffusion and light reflection into a formula that actually optimizes the look of your skin, that gives you this like illuminated, lifted look with a full coverage that feels comfortable? So that's what this foundation that we're launching in January is all about. And I think it's interesting because it's really modern. I think that's what we challenge our R&D team and our chemists that formulate all of our textures and formulas. Like we really challenge them to do something that hasn't been done, and to, maybe take something that exists in one product and is adapted to another. Like our previous foundation, Selfrefreshing Foundation, which is a long wear performance product, is based on sun care technology. So it was never really put into makeup. So we're like, well, what would happen if we put it into makeup? What would happen if we had a formula that would be activated by oil and humidity instead of like broken apart because of it? So that's, I think, the interesting thing about working for a brand like Shiseido is like the resources that we have to sort of reimagine and reinterpret something is what we always try to do.
Are you developing them here or in Japan?
So a combination of both. We have our headquarters is based in Tokyo, and we have an innovation center in Tokyo. We also have an innovation center that's based in New Jersey. We have an innovation center in China. I believe we're opening another innovation center in Singapore or Malaysia. So
wow.
It's a little bit of everywhere. Like we sort of do some of it here, some of it there. It's all based on the formula itself.
So those two foundations that you just brought up, they are different because one is long wearing and one is going to be, it's going to be lighter in texture.
Yeah. It's interesting because both of them are really lightweight in texture. So like, they're both weightless.
Okay.
It's almost the different needs. So I think so the Self-Refreshing Foundation, which we launched in 2019, which was such a great experience. It was the first time the Shiseido brand has had such an inclusive shade range.
I mean, the campaign is beautiful. It's gorgeous.
And also was an interesting way. That was like a way for me to bring in my love of dance. So the whole thing was about dance, and the film was about dance.
How did you do that? Are they from a certain company or?
So we actually, for the film, for the Self-Refreshing launch, we worked with this really amazing choreographer named Ryan Heffington, who does a lot of work for film and for television. He's sort of most famous for choreographing like all of Sia's videos. Chandelier. And so he did the choreography, and it was because the formula is all about movement, and it fights things that typically fight makeup wear, so oil and humidity and sweat, and then also facial movement, so like expression, moving your face around. Typically, you know, the makeup settles into pores.
Right.
And
As we get older, oh my God.
As we get older, metals everywhere. So we thought there was an interesting way to tell the story of the technology through movement and through dance. So that was sort of how that started, and then sort of moving. So it is sort of, again, it's a reinterpretation of like what longwear formulas typically feel like. It's a very natural finish. It gives you a flawless look, but it looks like skin. Sort of a natural matte finish, and it lasts for 24 hours. So it's really for somebody who wants, I think, performance. Maybe somebody who's a little bit oilier, somebody who has a little bit more combination skin, or somebody who really just wants makeup that's not going to budge. Radiant lifting is more, I don't want to say
radiant lifting is the new one.
Is the new one, yes. And so it's I don't want to say that it is for a more mature customer, but it is for somebody who wants more coverage. So I would say for somebody who needs coverage, if you have hyperpigmentation, if you have darkness, if you have uneven skin tone, but also if you have dryness, if you want something that's going to be more hydrating, this formula delivers moisture for 24 hours. And then the technology and the sort of optics is about how it illuminates the skin in any light. So if you like more of a radiant finish than a more matte or natural finish, this might be something that you like. So, but from a weight and a texture, they both feel really lightweight on the skin.
I'm obsessed with it already. I can taste it.
It's amazing. And I think one thing that was really exciting, so this is the first campaign that we're launching with Hunter Schafer, who is our brand ambassador, who I'm so excited to have her on board. I think, you know, this is the first product campaign that she's fronting for the brand. And I think, you know, again, in the creative storytelling, you know, we are telling this story about light and this idea about like feeling illuminated with light. And I think in the literal sense of we're talking about the finish and the formula and the benefit of the product, I think we're also using Hunter as a metaphor of this beacon of hope and light and illumination and you know, this representation of a new standard of beauty. I think she really represents that, and I'm so excited that she is working with us. It's something that really means a lot to me. So you'll see more with Hunter moving forward.
Do you want to tell people who might not know Hunter a little bit about Hunter and how this happened, this collab?
So I think so if Hunter has been somebody who's been in the industry, in the fashion industry for quite some time, and you know, I think she's always represented this really this really powerful, interesting point of view in beauty, and part of what was happening prior and sort of during our sort of collaboration with Hunter was she was cast in the show HBO show Euphoria. So anyone who maybe hasn't seen Euphoria.
Euphoria!
You know, it's something that was really interesting about Euphoria was this like Gen Z sort of zeitgeist of makeup, and almost like the beauty in the show. And I think the beauty of the show is that the makeup and the beauty looks really almost became part of the character and part of the expression. And I think not just Hunter, but like the show also stars Zendaya, Barbie Ferreira, Alexa Demi. There's all of these.
Sydney Sweeney,
Maud Apatow. There's this great cast of characters that are just really, I think, bringing this new language in beauty. And I think, you know, I knew about Hunter before Euphoria, and then as Euphoria was sort of starting, it was like, oh my God, we need Hunter for Shiseido. It's so perfect. It's a perfect alignment of just bringing this different approach to makeup, maybe a younger approach, but also an artistic approach. And, you know, aside from being an actress, she's also an artist. So bringing this level of artistry to makeup, which I think should inherently be there. But I think what we hope with Hunter, it just promotes this dialogue of like disbanding the rules, having a little bit more fun, being playful, and just integrating your own point of view and your own artistic point of view into how you wear makeup. You know, she said something like early on when we were starting to create content with her, was she's like, you know, I'm somebody who likes to like draw on my face, like literally draw on my face. And I'm like, that should be
what we're doing.
More people should be
Yeah.
into that, you know, like why does it have to be a conventional eyeline? Like take it out to your temples, draw on your forehead, draw around your mouth. Like, so I think she just encaptures this really modern feeling of beauty. And we're so excited to share more with what we're doing with Hunter.
It would be nice to bring back artistry to the beauty industry.
Right? I mean,
that would be great.
It's such a no-brainer, right? I mean, it's totally a no-brainer.
I know. I want to talk about these incredible creations that you have sent me.
So I think I was, you know, when we were talking about, you know, the name, we sort of the look behind the look, right? Yeah. We haven't really talked about a look behind the look.
Right.
Talked about lots of different things. So this was a story that I did. I think it was 2009 or 2010, working with one of my favorite photographers, Tony Kim, who I did a lot of beauty work with him. And this was for a magazine that my good friend Keith Pollack at the time was the editor-in-chief of, this magazine Du Jour, that's no longer around. And we were channeling Warhol superstars on the shoot. And so the model is as Andreja Pejic, who we cast because we sort of thought that she really embodied the spirit of Warhol and like Warhol superstars. So when we conceptualized the shoot, we sort of were going to transform her into iconic characters from the Warhol and the factory days, and including Andy. So the image that you're talking about is actually Andrea as Andy Warhol in drag, which is sort of all kinds of meta because, you know, just the idea of gender bending, the idea of a different representation of gender, the idea of transcending, I think, gender, which is something that I've always thought personally about. I think that's part of why Hunter is such a perfect affiliation with Shiseido. I think it's part of why you know, when we were talking earlier about the Make Up Your Mind, Express Yourself images, like I've never thought about gender as being something linear, especially when it comes to makeup, and makeup is sort of for everyone. So this opportunity, this shoot was really interesting, just to the idea of transforming. And I think so often as a makeup artist, you don't, you know, you're doing makeup to groom, you're doing makeup to accentuate like the character. Maybe you're working with a celebrity and you're just, you know, she always wears red lipstick, so you're putting red lipstick on. And this was a real opportunity to transform somebody and really to showcase makeup as a vehicle for transformation, and showing Andy and Nico and Candy Darling and Edie Sedgwick. It was just, oftentimes you don't get that opportunity, I guess, in your work to show all of your sort of bells and whistles and tricks. And that was just, it was memorable to me because I'm a huge Warhol fan. I'm so inspired by that era and all of those people and that moment in pop culture, and sort of again thinking about how forward thinking and how prophetic, you know, Andy really was about, like this whole idea of everyone's going to be famous for 15 minutes, and you know, his posted stamp size portraits that are now like the model for Instagram posts. It's like we live in a world that actually was you know, sort of created sometime in the 60s or 70s by you know, this very forward thinking artist. So I loved that shoot, and I think it also speaks a lot about me personally, and it was such a personal moment. I mean, I think I've had lots of opportunities like that in my career, but I think that one, for just everything that sort of melded together perfectly. It was really one of those moments.
Well, because it's still really beautiful, the look. I mean, you know, it's really beautiful. And it's so timeless in a strange way. So what made it timeless? That is it our minds that's making it timeless, or is it really timeless? I know that's the craziest question, but I'm just thinking about it.
It's interesting because I think we always use the word like, and I know that, the industry overuses lots of words like, and I'm guilty of this, like, you're on set and you're talking to an art director or a photographer or a stylist, and it's always like, there becomes this vernacular of like, we want it to, I want it to be, I want it to be iconic, right? Like that's what everyone always says. And
We
like,
all want viral iconic.
that's right. So I think it's like, these images to me, because like, at least for me, and like looking through that lens of Warhol, these were his icons, these were his music.
Yeah.
And I think that, you ask everybody, speaking about our mutual friend, Justin, the idea of a muse is something that has a lot of longevity in your career. And I don't know that I have one. I have many muses that sort of inspire my work and my career and, everything I do. But they are consistent. You have those consistent muses, those things that constantly inspire you. Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a film, maybe it's a piece of art, it's an opera, like whatever those things are, they always have that inspiration. So I guess for me, why it feels iconic to me and why it feels timeless, I guess, is because I'm sort of referencing something that existed before.
Right.
And I think that's, there's sort of need for both of that, right? I think, you always want to try to create something that hasn't existed before, but I think you also, as artists or as creatives, we also pay homage to the things that have inspired us and the things that have cultivated who we are. So I think, I guess that's always the goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know. That's really well said, actually. And I know Morrissey is one of your muses because that's one of the things I love about you. One of the many things. Now, these wigs, who did this hair?
So the wigs were amazing for this too. So which was also part of the transformation. So the hairstylist, his name's Kenji, and
okay,
just incredible. And I actually think this was our first time working together on this shoot, and I was really nervous about it because, and you probably can attest to this, like, there are hairstylists that are really good with wigs, and then there are hairstylists that are really not good with wigs. And because so much of the performance of the shoot was really
wigs,
relying on the hair, you're sort of like, because it's like, you're like, oh my God, the wig isn't working.
Right.
Oh God, it just looks like a bad wig that I got on 14th Street. Like, oh my God, this isn't working. But no, the hair was incredible. And I think
it's so great.
Styling all of it, like I said, it even just down to like the portraiture style, and the lighting that Tony designed was really about capturing the iconic moment and imagery of each of those characters. So like, the sort of polka dots projected on the Nico character, which was part of a live performance video of like Nico and the Velvet Underground. So it was all very much based on sort of bringing these moments to life. And again, I think what I love about that, again, that whole story and that whole moment was probably the element of performance, because it really was performance.
Now, this leopard, these aren't the same model.
Yes,
shut up.
Yeah.
In the leopard?
Yes.
I can't. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, talk to me about this poor eyebrow situation then. Tell me about it. This was not shot in one day.
It was shot in one day. So we did, I'm trying to remember, like, I can't remember what we did first, but I think we actually did the leopard, which is Edie.
Okay.
So I think that was
it's like, I just die. I love it so much.
I think it was the first one because we were using Andrea's like actual brows. It was before we blocked them. So we did that, I think, portrait first, and then that was, wearing like the little black sort of like pixie wig. I wanted to do Edie Sedgwick as a brunette instead of a blonde because everyone always thinks of her as a blonde. But
yes,
Andrea is a blonde. We wanted a little more transformation. And then the Nico wig, because we knew that it had the bangs, I also knew that we could sort of cover her eyebrows to create, we knew that we were
Okay.
gonna sort of use that film, the polka dot sort of red gel sort of effect. So then we did those 2 looks, and then we blocked out Andrea's eyebrows, and you know, she has really full
Okay.
eyebrows naturally. And then we did the Candy Darling, which is the purple and the red lip, which is my favorite, I think, and sort
It's
of
so
redrew the
fun.
eyebrows on. And then the very last one was sort of Andy in drag, which we knew could be a little bit more like fucked up and messy because
Mm-hmm.
he was never perfect. And like those Polaroids, it's based on a Polaroid of him in drag. And you could sort of see the brow coming through, and you could sort
Yep.
of see the texture of the makeup. So we sort of built the day, which again, it is so crazy to think that we did that all in one day. You know, we sort of built the day to make
What
sure
a
that
day. You had a drink after that.
I definitely had a drink after that.
How fun. I mean, oh my God. Now, what's your secret to the lower, to getting that pigment on the lower eyeliner? Like, why does it travel? How do you stop it from traveling? How do you stop? Why does it look so clean here in this Edie Sedgwick
I think one thing, you know, it's all about the prep. And I think especially when you're
prep?
doing anything really precise, something that I also learned from Francois and years of working with him is like more powder, like more loose powder, more loose powder, more loose powder. Like loose powder is the thing that like
Hmm.
saves your life because it sort of sets everything. It keeps makeup on, and it also creates like a little bit of like a diffusion.
But
So
when I
especially,
do loose powder, it gets in my, it makes me look old.
I think you have to get a good translucent
Yep,
powder
it has to be good.
that doesn't have like too much weight. But I think especially when you're doing the like the precision work, like what I would always do is usually start with a pencil
Mhm.
and sort of like a pencil that's actually not long wear, something that is like easy to
Okay.
smooth and easy to remove. So you sort of get the shape that you want, and then you can go in and clean it up with the cotton swab or whatever. And then when you like the shape that you get, I powder it.
Okay.
And then I go in with something more long wear, like a liquid or like a long wear eyeliner. So you sort of get the shape first and then go in with something that's like, you know, like a liquid. Like I love a liquid that I always like felt tip liquids that work more like a
Yeah.
marker so that you can just really get in and sketch.
Thin and then building it,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
okay.
That's what I always like to do. But that also is one of those things too. I think it's, you know, when you're actually doing that on someone else, it's always about like the right combination of, have you had the right amount of caffeine or too much caffeine? Because like, if that was like an extra coffee on that day, it would have been like this. So, you know, I think that's, sometimes you just nail it. And sometimes it's like, sometimes I'll do eyeliner on the first try and I'm like, damn, thank God you got it. And then the other times you're like, you struggle and you take it on and take it off. So
What do you do like when you're struggling and you don't want anyone to know? Like
usually you just, I've learned, and again, I think this is something just from years of working on set. I think one thing is you have to have a plan and you have to have like a direction of where you're going, but you also have to be willing to like scrap it all and start over and like
yes.
change direction. Because sometimes it is also like you might imagine like a certain look on somebody and you've never worked with that model, you've never worked with that face, and then you get to set and you're like, oh, actually, like her eye is really hooded and the like precise eyeliner is never going to stay on, you know, unless you do this the whole time. So I'm going to do a smoky eyeliner instead of like this precise. So I think having the flexibility to adapt, because like, I know for me, like, you know, if I have a hooded eye, my eyebrow, you know, my brow bone is getting loose. It's falling.
Mhm.
Like I can't really do like a sharp, precise eye line because it's just all going to smudge. So I'll do a smoky eye on my eye shape because it will look better.
Yeah.
So like working with what you have and not fighting it, I think.
Yes.
I also think too, if you try something like 3 times, it's like, I never want to torture someone that much. It's like, forget it. Let's do a lip instead of an eye.
3 times. Okay, this is the 3rd time, and then we're moving on. I love that. I love that rule. No, I know. I've been doing the on my liquid liners, I've been seeing it transfer up here. And I've been like, these they don't make these eyeliners like they used to. And then I'm like, no, Tiffany, you're 45.
It's always, I think that's always, it's always it's somewhere in the middle, right? Because I think
Yes,
that too. I do think there's I think that's one thing, like, I remember having this conversation a lot with like clients when I was
of
still working in
course.
retail, very much in the beginning of my career. This idea of problem solving, like
Mhm.
somebody would say, well, my eyeliner always rubs off on my crease, or
Always.
my lip
Yes.
liner bleeds, or my blush doesn't stay on. And sometimes you have to figure out
Those are actually the 3 things. Those are actually check, check, check. That I feel like when I was a counter girl, like that's my life. Those 3 questions
it's true.
one after
Because
another.
they're universal problems. And I think you approach, part of it is you can approach it with like, I have a great product that's going to like solve all of your issues, and it's long wear, and it's this, and it's easy to use. Great. And that is definitely one thing. Part of it's the product. Part of it's how you're using the product. So like understanding if you're doing something weird in your application. And then part of it is honestly just the reality that we're 3-dimensional, real, warm, living, breathing creatures that are
Right.
going to do things to like, our makeup and the products that we wear. So
Right.
being realistic, like, my one of my best girlfriends, like, who always wore a very precise, bold red lip for her whole life. She's like, yeah, my lips aren't what they used to be. They're deflating. I'm getting lines around my mouth. I'm going to wear a transparent red lipstick instead of a matte lipstick because it
Keeping it
will.
red, but just changing the formula. That's
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. Um,
All problem solving.
it really, I mean, what e what did I wanna ask you? Oh, yes. So there again is the smoky on the lower, which is always the goal, but never achieved by many. This is a true, true talent.
I think also,
And
I think one thing that I've always told people when you are doing a smoky eye, versus a really graphic or sharp eye, like a smoky eye, and again, something that I learned from working with Francois, it's like I always hear these words in my head, like a smoky eye should be like a cloud. So like you should never have like
Mm.
hard edges. So like, which also means that you can take a smoky eye like out to your temple, or like up to your eyebrow, or like down to your cheek.
Right.
Because as long as it's like blended and doesn't have like a hard start and stop, it will look beautiful. And it also really frames the eye. I think that's one thing that makeup artists do that like, real people won't do on themselves, is like like we stop on ourselves when we see the end of a feature. So like my eyebrow stops here, I'm going to stop there. My eye
Yeah.
stops here, my lip stops here. Where when someone else is working on you, they naturally see you in 3D. They see all angles of you. So,
Right.
you make your eyes look bigger by bringing your eyebrow out to your temple and your eyeliner out to your. So don't always go a little bit further than you think, because sometimes that makes the biggest difference. It makes your eye look more open, or it makes your cheek more sculpted, or it makes your lip look more full. And again, the other thing is that if it doesn't work, you can take it off and start over.
I forget that all the time. That you can take it off and start over. I know for Halloween, did another Sally, and I was just like and I was just kept adding it. I was like, I should have started over like a half an hour ago, and I would have saved a lot more time.
But sometimes too, it's also like sometimes you can just sort of blast through and do more. Like same thing. This was like my first year dressing up for Halloween in so many years, and I just literally I just put more and more and more and more and more and more. I was like, I'll just see what happens. Right? We'll see what happens.
I know. And then all of a sudden, everything just turns that one color of brown black. And you're like, oh no, I reached the limit. I did it. I did it. Um,
Yeah.
James, do you have any advice for anybody that would want it? Like, what are you seeing now in the artists that come to Shiseido? Does that even still happen? Do people come to the retail world to break in, or how do you see it all getting started for the next generation?
It's interesting because I think I mean, obviously with, the crazy unprecedented time we're in, where,
Right.
I think retail brick and mortar retail is just such a question mark right now in general.
Of course.
I think what's interesting about like social media and the sort of removing some of the walls, I guess, between like brand and consumer, or fan, quote unquote, is there's a direct line of communication. So oftentimes what I'll hear personally, or what the brand will hear, our communications team, our artist relations team, we'll get reached out. Like an artist will reach out. Hey, I love your products. Is it possible to get your products? I'm doing a shoot, or I'm doing a movie, or and that's one way. I think, social media is such a gift really for all of us, because it allows everybody to sort of have their point of view, and portray it. And I think what most people are starting that dialogue because they want some sort of engagement. I do think sometimes the downside of that is that there isn't maybe as much the like development or like the cultivation of your craft or your artistry, or like having the opportunity to like you're learning in a much more public sphere, I guess, which is sometimes tough.
Interesting.
But it's interesting, but I also think that like I would say like the younger generation probably doesn't care as much as like an older person might, or maybe even as I did as I was like developing. I think you should have the opportunity to experiment. You should have the opportunity to like try something on. You should know that you should never be restricted or limited by like what your sort of expression is. Like, that could be, I guess what's harder now than what it used to be is that it's harder to specialize. I think like it's harder to be say, okay, I want to be a special effects makeup artist, or I want to be a fashion beauty makeup artist, or I want to be, I want to do men's grooming, or I want to do permanent makeup, or, I think it's harder for people to like understand what the specialty is, or where their specialty will lie, because they don't necessarily have the same opportunity to try different things on. Because so many things is like, it's just here in social media.
Yeah.
But I do think, I think advice wise, like, I think one thing that I see, and I guess from my point of view, what I'm more attracted to is when I see somebody that has a unique point of view versus somebody that's doing what everyone else is doing. And I think that, the world of social media is very saturated and it's very noisy, and a lot of it looks the same, and people sort of jump on the same thing. Like, like I never understand the like globbing product on a brush, and like, all of that, like 100 layers of foundation and all of those weird things that sort of start happening. Like, I never understand where that comes from. And also those things are not interesting to me, but like what I do find really interesting and inspiring is like seeing a point of view that seems unique or seems like referential. Or I think also really interesting is like so many people, so many makeup artists use themselves as a canvas versus using a model or using a celebrity. So this idea of self-portraiture, which is also something I think as somebody who loves art is a really interesting
Warhol
vehicle of expression. Yeah. So I think it all, for me, it all goes 360, right? A full circle of
360, yes.
Yeah.
Or is it 180? No, 360.
I know. What is it? I'm not a mathematician here, I'll tell you that.
No, I know. Yes. So the point of view is very important. And yeah, I know. Yeah. I don't know how it's going to change or when the bubble's going to burst, but I'm anxious to see, what's going to happen after COVID when people start taking their masks off and showing us their lips again.
I think what is interesting though, like one thing I have noticed, and this is, I would imagine this is happening everywhere. I mean, I'm seeing it in New York, and like I'm noticing it on the streets that like people are becoming more expressive with their eye makeup because they're covered.
Yes.
So I do think that that's an interesting moment. Like we have been maybe, from an industry point of view, I think we have been very much in this lip world. And I know, maybe New York is an anomaly, but like that's the thing that women often do to like leave the house. It's like, I'll throw on a bold lip, pull my hair back and throw on a bold lip. And now I think people are reimagining like what liner and eyeshadow and mascara does, because you're not relying on your lip
Right.
product when you go outside. Lipstick is becoming much more personal, like when you're on a Zoom or you're just inside. So I do think it'll shift. I mean, there's that idea of the lipstick effect, right? Which is always, what happens in times of crisis, whether it's a financial crisis or it's war or it's a pandemic, which is what we're living in. There is always those things that, like, people will always want those little objects that make them feel better, those little things that like transform their mood, and become really like personal rituals and personal things. So we do see that usually in times of strife. So I do think the reaction, I'm imagining that there will be this big sort of celebratory moment when we all take to the streets, showing our full faces and our full makeup looks, which I think will be amazing.
I totally see that happening. I do. I mean, a lot of people are saying like nobody's going to care anymore and we're all going to be like drawing back. But I don't see that in my circle of friends happening. Nobody can wait to put red on and walk around. And yeah,
I agree.
I think so too. Let's see. Did we cover everything? Oh my God, James, this conversation has been so dense. And I feel like we burned calories.
That's good. Because I'm not burning calories any other way.
Probably. Me either. Oh my God. That's one thing that I'm not like rushing to do is get back to the gym, to the
Oh man.
No, I'm not. But I think we talked about everything. I'm gonna let you go. I know you are a very busy man, and you're gonna go like invent the next Wonder Foundation, formula right now as we leave. So I look forward to everything that's coming in the new year, and I can't wait to tell everybody about it and try it. And I look forward to seeing and touching and feeling and wearing everything that you created.
Oh my God, such a pleasure.
Thank you for talking to me.
Such a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. And I hope we see each other in person really soon.
Oh, me too. With red lipstick.
Are you guys still with me? That was a lot of glorious information. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did creating it. Let us know. And until next week, maybe I'll see you at the virtual makeup show. It's the 28th through the 31st of January. And head to makeupshow.com for more info. And I have a code for you. This is for $5 off the admission price. And the code is TMS Virtuals in all caps. TMS VIRTUALS. Bye. Look Behind the Look is a Vinyl Foot production, written by me, your host, Tiffany Bartok, produced by Jace Bartok, and produced and edited by Kelly Riley, with audio engineering by Nicole Tucker. If you're interested in learning more, find our video version on the YouTube channel, Look Behind the Look Podcast. There you can see rare photos and clips from our guests. And please follow us on Twitter at LookBehindPod and Instagram at LookBehindTheLook. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe. And tell your friends and spread the word. You can subscribe to us on iTunes or any podcatcher of your choice. Thanks for listening to Look Behind the Look.